understand this, you have to go back to what young brother here referred to as the house Negro and the field Negro, back during slavery. There was two kinds of slaves. There was the house Negro and the field Negro. The house Negro, they lived in the house with master. They dressed pretty good. They ate good because they ate his food, what he left. They lived in the attic or the basement, but still they lived near their master. And they loved their master more than the master loved himself. They would give their life to save their master's house quicker than the master would. The house Negro, if the master said, we got a good house here, the house Negro say, yeah, we got a good house here. Whenever the master said we, he said we. That's how you can tell a house Negro. If the master's house caught on fire, the house Negro would fight harder to put the blaze out than the master would. If the master got sick, the house Negro would say, what's the matter, boss? We sick. We sick. He identified himself with his master more than his master identified with himself. And if you came to the house Negro and said, let's run away, let's escape, let's separate, that house Negro would look at you and say, man, you crazy. What you mean separate? Where is there a better house than this? Where can I wear better clothes than this? Where can I eat better food than this? That was that house Negro. In those days, he was called a house nigger. And that's what we call him today because we still got some house niggers running around here.
First of all, on behalf of the Patrice Lumumba Coalition, I'd like to thank you for coming out this evening for what we believe will be a very edifying program. This particular program, as you know, is called the Exploitation of El Hajj Malik El-Shabazz, a rally to stop the pimping and sampling of the legacy of Malcolm X. It is a part of a series of programs that we have been doing. When we first raised the issue that the idea of a film on Malcolm at this time seemed to be more opportunistic rather than something that we should be looking forward to. And because we questioned the whole emphasis on this film and the kind of collaboration that we saw with certain elements of the establishment that oppresses our people in trying to see this film done. As you know, the film was a 20-year-old project that had been laying dormant until people in the street, nationalists, revolutionaries, people who were trying to maintain the revolutionary fervor of the 60s and the continuity to that preceded that effort, trying to maintain the best of that particular period and to put it into a more contemporary context given all that we had learned from those experiences. And it was that effort that brought the consciousness of Malcolm X's contributions to so many people. Rather than what it seems to be now, where the film is trying to present itself as the real, docudrama or the real story of Malcolm and what he stood for, we figure that if you start to raise some little questions, you would have a different picture. For instance, how many of you out here believe that Warner Brothers would put $40 million up for someone to make a film to make black youth want to be revolutionary like Malcolm? That's the first question you have to ask. I mean, did anybody here, I didn't get a feel of that. How many people feel that they believe that Warner Brothers would do that? So if you start with that, and then you start to realize that the autobiography of Malcolm X, the legacy of Malcolm X, is not a Spike Lee joint, and can never be. And you start to evaluate, as we did a couple of years ago, the whole character of the films that Spike Lee produces, then we would get an idea that there was reason for us to be suspect of what is, coming forth. But this, and the irony of this thing is that in trying to prove a point, we end up making the point even more elaborate, because the film has nothing to do really with the contributions of Malcolm X. Malcolm X's life is a life that needs to be studied, and very keenly, and it is one that a film, could be, in some sense, only a reflection of what that life was all about. What seems to be happening now is that there is a concentrated effort to connect the film to Malcolm's life. Instead of Malcolm's life being the what promotes a film, the film is now, or the film being promoting Malcolm's life is now used to promote a film. If you've been downtown to Times Square, you'll see a huge X with just a little November on the bottom. And Gil Noble told me a couple of weeks ago when he was in Los Angeles trying to interview some gang members that there's a 10-story X on a building with just November on the bottom. When we raised the question on LIB, we heard that Spike Lee came on and he started to defend what he was doing and said the film could not be made by a committee, and that he had a great deal of influences, including Dr. John Henry Clark, he had talked to, and gave the people an idea that because he had spent some time with Dr. Clark, that he knew what everything was all about. He said the same thing about Earl Grant, who is a former member of the Organization of Afro-American Unity, and he made references to Peter Bailey. I checked with all, with the exception of Peter Bailey, said he did spend some time talking to Spike, but he also was very supportive of what we are doing here because he has the same concerns. What we're trying to do here really is to alert the community to the shameless and crass exploitation of not only one person's life, but really of a movement. And we're saying that what we feel in the final analysis, that our people should become supportive of the movement, not a movie. That whether there was a movie or not, there would be a movement trying to maintain Malcolm's legacy and the legacy of all those who came from that particular period that also, made great sacrifices. That is what we're concerned with here, because right now, our youth need it. We came into the school this evening and saw something we had never seen before. If you look up there, you'll see the graffiti. This school was just recently painted, and someone said to wipe it off. I said, no, leave it so you could see what is actually happening to our youth. That in this school named after one of the great revolutionaries, Harriet Tubman, that the children could be so, out of touch with what the reality of their environment is, that they would actually deface the interior of an auditorium that can only be used to instruct them to something that will better their lives. And so we feel that it is important for you to get a gist of what this struggle is all about and to see if we can actually get you to join with those people who are very, very sincere in trying to get our youth to appreciate, not sample, because sampling, we all know what that is. You take a little of this, a little bit of that, and you're really not satisfied with the whole thing. You just want to take, you want to be very, in political sense, it would be being eclectic. But in this particular case, it's really being jived because most people are not doing anything for, the promotion of revolution. The X that we understand now from a couple of months, maybe 6 months ago, USA Today, a newspaper, pointed out that, again, Spike Lee had created this X and that was now being used by so many people who had ripped him off. And that actually that he had done it to promote his movie and that now you see this X symbol everywhere. That's not true. The truth is that the X that you see out there now came out of an effort, a concentrated effort to promote a struggle around maintaining Malcolm's legacy and around the saving of the Audubon Borough where Malcolm was assassinated. It was designed by Omar Wally Clay of the December 12th movement. And it was put out here by the Black Consciousness Movement, which is the youth wing of the December 12th movement. And it had been generated throughout all of this city and throughout the country, and particularly in the last couple of, maybe in the last half a year, through Arm the Masses newspaper. And it is something that Omar Wally didn't want to go around saying he designed it. He didn't really care that much about it, but because it's been made an issue, we'd like to just correct it. Anyway, the thing is that it would be a petty issue if it wasn't so much at stake. And what's at stake is that the kind of commercialization of this particular symbol of anything, the Nation of Islam could say that, that they know how it was created because it was created to actually represent the unknown, to represent the name that was missing, the real name of the African people who were brought here against their will and slavery and indentured servitude. And because we didn't know our last names, the X was used to replace it. So it has a genesis. But to show you how when people go to bragging and to try to show how much that they are responsible for something, history has a way of flying back at you. It just so happens that the other day when I came back to work, someone had left a poster that showed the old Negro League, baseball league, the caps that were used for those particular teams. And as you know, when the black ball players were discriminated against and could not go into so-called Major League Baseball, although they had equal standard as far as their own players was concerned, they created their own league. And many of the white ball players, Ted Williams and some of the better players, would be able to attest to the fact that these people were really great. We see it now where they have to be put into the Hall of Fame. But one of the things that I was looking at when I was trying to see all of these various teams, and in fact they had some wild teams. One was called the Atlanta Black Crackers. I mean they had all kind of names. I never heard nothing like that. 1938. Let me see it. 1938, the Atlanta Black Crackers. But one of the teams that was very, very interesting was a team that came about in 1936. It was called the Cuban X-Giants. I just want to show you something. (1936), Spike. That's the cap that they wore, the Cuban X-Giants. I mean, just for a point to be made as far as history is concerned. Because the whole thing was who put it on the baseball caps, who is the one who put these things out there, who's making the money? How many of these things are made in Israel? How many of them are made in South Korea? How many are made in Taiwan? How many are made? How many are really made by the movement to actually promote the movement? This is the concern. And just as we know that if you realize that there are people making money, this whole thing is about making money. Before I introduce the panel and then have our keynote speaker, to open this whole program, I'd just like to read a couple of faxes that came in today from around the country and outside of the country in regard to this program. The first one is from the Biko Rodney Malcolm Coalition in Toronto, Canada. It says the Biko Rodney Malcolm Coalition, BRMC, was directly influenced by the Patrice Lumumba Coalition. The group took its name from 3 African marches from the continent, from the Caribbean, and from North America. We are deeply concerned about the direction that Spike Lee will take the Malcolm X film. Whatever Mr. Lee does, however, it is up to the progressive wing of the African liberation movement to make our statement about Malcolm. We support the PLC's initiative against the exploitation of Malcolm. Little by little, we must oppose the forces who are attempting to fatten their bank accounts off Malcolm X potato chips, Malcolm X lax, or films. Let us tell the true story of El-Hajj Malik al-Shabazz, Norman Otis Richmond, and he was a founding member of the Biko Rodney Malcolm Coalition, which did a lot of work around the South Africa issue in Toronto, Canada. This is from Brother Ron Wilcox from Continent to Continent and African Issues magazine program in WKPFK and Pacifica Radio in Los Angeles. Statement to the rallies to stop the pimping and sampling of the legacy of Malcolm X. One of Brother Malcolm's most outstanding qualities was that he had no price. He was not for sale. It is therefore a profound... It is therefore a profoundly disappointing twist of irony that Spike Lee has accepted millions of dollars from the masses of propaganda to undo Malcolm's legacy. Spike Lee is an unprincipled, arrogant, and profit-driven hustler whose treachery, greed, and stupidity will be long remembered. It is a shame that Spike Lee is so insincere, corrupted, and misdirected, while Brother Malcolm was none of these. African people and others in every part of the world have a duty to denounce and oppose Spike Lee and this disgusting film. He's saying this without even, he's also, of course, Ron Wilkins is a representative of the Patrice Lumumba Coalition in Los Angeles. Well, he's saying this without seeing the film, and the reason why he's saying this is because we know what's going to happen when the film comes out. It's going to be a blockbuster. A lot of people will go in there, be overwhelmed by the color, by what they see on the screen, and because of the impact of seeing something that is nostalgic and something that, had it not been for the intervention by the group of people who oppose and try to get Spike just to do the right thing, as far as Malcolm is concerned, that the film would not even be halfway what they're getting to try to put out now, because the film is being corrected almost day by day, because each day gets closer. They remember one of the things that was put out by I think it was the Mosque of Islamic Brotherhood, when they raised the question regarding the film. They said, will Spike Lee become Salman Rushdie's roommate? Now, that's very interesting. Now, the last one is a message of solidarity in defense of Malcolm, to be read at the New York City rally, August the 7th, 1992, from Abdul Al-Kalimat, 21st Century Books, Chicago, Illinois. We are pleased to hear about this important rally in defense of a revolutionary liberation perspective on Malcolm X, the freedom fighter we remember, the one we loved, and the one who loved us so he gave his life so that we might live. Greetings from Chicago. We extend to you, everyone gathered here today, and everyone who will gather in the future in rallies such as this, our solidarity with your struggles against the same enemies that Malcolm spoke out so eloquently against. We have a common struggle here in this country, throughout the African diaspora, Africa itself, indeed throughout the world. Our common enemy is the system of exploitation and greed in which all forms of oppression are used against us. Racism, sexism, homophobia, discrimination against the elderly, the handicapped, immigrants, and the homeless. Indeed, all of the criminal social practices built upon the foundation of economic exploitation. We greet you because only in unity can we hope to survive the barbarism we face and the attacks yet to come. The current attacks against Malcolm are attacks against our future, and we must defend Malcolm as we fight to survive. We believe that Malcolm was an individual who came along among us and was chosen by his personal experience of walking through the valley of death, defined by our collective experience. His father was murdered by racists. His mother was incarcerated in a mental hospital after fighting the welfare system. He passed through detention, foster care, and took to the streets as a hustler, only to finally descend into the hell of the U.S. prison system. He became every young black man fighting the system of racist genocide. But that wasn't all. He emerged and was anointed with the full concentrated power of our radical black tradition, the ideological practices of self-liberation theology, Pan-Africanism, black nationalism, black feminism, and socialism. So because he reflected our shared experience and our collective memory, Malcolm became us for us. We embrace him because in him we have a concentration of our history and our future. This country is beginning to counterattack, and we have to respond. The capitalist system is turning Malcolm into another commodity, with the dual intention of making some profit while assuming the thousands or millions of cash sales will so popularize Malcolm that it will become common and therefore trivial. This is as true for the t-shirts, posters, as it is for the coffee cups, potato chips, underwear, indeed for movies as well. In fact, even the main source of his published speeches is suspect on this point. Exploitation is everywhere. We have to fight it with the spirit of resistance that was the main dynamic of the Malcolm who stood so tall in 1965. Our goal is to stake out the high ground with revolutionary action so that everyone who identifies with Malcolm is given the opportunity to get on with the revolutionary road. This means that we have to turn a bad thing into a good thing. We have to use dialectics and turn this exploitation into a force for good. How can we do this? The main action will come from our people as a fight to survive. This is the lesson of the 1992 rebellions of South Central Los Angeles and Washington Heights in New York. Malcolm was in the streets. Malcolm was a force in the rebirth of revolutionary resistance. Everyone who spoke against the LA rebellion was repudiating Malcolm X. Everyone who spoke against the rebellion in Washington Heights was throwing Malcolm into the garbage. Don't believe what people say in times of peace. Hold them accountable for what they say in times of war. Malcolm X became a revolutionary, and we have to grasp his entire life to understand this profound point and to accept it as a real challenge for our lives. It is easy to recall a quote, but it is much harder to confront his challenge to transcend himself as a soldier in our army for black liberation. Malcolm is a central theme in the militant music of our black youth. But we have to understand that Malcolm has been kept alive in the study program and rituals of resistance embodied in the black liberation movement and the structures of black studies. The music will be most relevant when it serves its Pied Piper function of leading the youth to join the ranks of the movement and take on the serious task of study and struggle. Otherwise, why shouldn't we regard these raps as part of the exploitation as well? Who gets the money? There is no point to being liberal. It's time to speak out as he would have done. It's time to be honest with ourselves. Again, comrades, brothers and sisters, we here in Chicago greet you in this decisive hour as we gather to defend Malcolm and set ourselves more firmly on the path to black liberation and for social revolution. Forward, death to our enemies, long live Malcolm. And do our Calumet. So that's three, with that, I would like to invite the members of the panel to the stage. Professor Preston Wilcox is here now from Afram Associates and from the Malcolm X Lovers Association. Sister Viola Plummer from the Harriet Tubman Fannie Lou Hamer Collective and December 12th Movement. Olive Armstrong from the Save the Audubon Coalition. She's also with the December 12th Movement. And we're waiting. Brother Sonny Carson and Brother Miri Baraka is supposed to be here. Miri Baraka, of course. And we want to let you know that this whole struggle is not about Miri Baraka versus Spike Lee. This whole thing is about defending a legacy which Spike Lee happened to intervene into this whole discussion, and therefore he's become a consideration. Well, we don't want to equate, even though I probably have done so myself in trying to lay out this whole thing, because probably it's the way it's most manifested in its most diabolical fashion, that the movie, that everyone is waiting to see this, and when they see this, they will then take this as the lead for what we're actually talking about in regards to Malcolm. So we don't want to really get into that. But we think that it's important that we do deal with it because it is something that has drawn a lot of people into this whole question of how do we view Malcolm. We don't come to deify Malcolm, nor do we come to try to denigrate him. we come to put him in a proper perspective as one who lived a particular experience that is very beneficial for the broad masses of our people, particularly our youth, particularly those who have suffered so and who are still suffering, for them to see an example of how you can fall down into the mire and raise yourself up with the proper instructions and teachings, and then take that to the point where in the future you become known throughout the world as a revolutionary and a statesman. So that is what we are very much interested in. That's what we are very interested in at this particular time. We want to again thank you for coming out, and at this particular time we're going to go directly to our keynote speaker, because we don't believe in messing around, and we want to make sure that we can preserve our elder as long as we can blessed to have him. And for this particular point, when talking about, Pan-Africanism, talking about African nationalism, and talking about, African history from the beginning until the current period, and with a vision for the future, we know that when you talk about Dr. John Henry Clark, we're talking about somebody, who is beyond, any kind of, duplication. As you know, Dr. Clark has been a teacher, a historian, a writer, an editor, and an activist, professor of African history, and a former chair of the Black and Puerto Rican Studies Department at Hunter College. And his books include, and it's very interesting, one of the first books that Dr. Clark really came out with that he organized was against William Styron's Nat Turner, which was the same type of effort to do to Nat Turner what people like Bruce Perry and even Spike Lee are trying to do to Malcolm today. When he put together William Styron's Nat Turner, 10 Black Writers Respond, which was 1968. And then, of course, Malcolm X, The Man in His Times, which is 1969, which he edited, Harlem, USA, 1971. Can African People Save Themselves in 1990. And Notes for an African World Revolution, Africa's at the Crossroads in 1991. Will you please welcome one of the great teachers of our time, and one of the great activists and contributors, and a person who knew and understood what Malcolm X was all about. And we don't intend to see his name pimped off in regard to this movie coming forward. Will you please welcome Dr. John Henry Clark. This is the live mic right here.
Okay, good. I'm thankful for being active. And I'm thankful that I have not changed my position very much over the years. I'm meeting some senior citizens once in a while that I met as a teenager. I know this might stretch your imagination quite a bit, but I too was a teenager once. And when I was introduced to a concept called communism and socialism, I thought it was a good idea, and I still do. And I don't think it has failed. I think the communists has failed and the socialists has failed, but I don't think the idea itself has failed. Nor do I think the idea was European. Right. It was here before the Europeans were here. They're the ones who spoiled it. Then I spoke of an independent road for African people to this ideology. I still believe that. And if you try to fit yourself into somebody else's thing, you do someone else's bidding. Now, I know what the subject for tonight is, and I'm going to talk on the subject. In fact, I'm talking on the subject. Because we lost something in this transition that we're trying to get by. And one of the main reasons why the whole of the Western world and the media is trying to bury a Malcolm, that if he is to emerge, he is to emerge in such a way no one will see him as an image worth emulating, that he was restoring something someone took away. The concept of the management of the state. Once that is washed from your mind, you become dependent on other people to tell you how to manage a state. The reasons why both Malcolm and Nkrumah, and to some extent Julius Nyerere, although his brief flirtation didn't last too long, had to be taken out of your memory. Because once you understand the nature of that message, you will not seek liberation from your slave master. You liberate yourself. What Malcolm X was trying to give us back was our mentality, trying to give us back and show us that we managed a state and managed states before Europeans wore shoes or lived in houses with windows. And once you understand what you did before that interference and learn how to walk on your own and be the masters of your own destiny, then you can look at the world in proper perspectives. You will not bow to a juvenile delinquent who came out of Europe with a gun. Now, I am not talking, nor will I address myself extensively to a movie I have not seen. I am not naive enough to expect Hollywood, the handmaiden of Western control of image. And when you control what people see, you control what they do. A people would do for themselves to the extent of what they think about themselves and to the extent of what they're willing to believe about themselves. I am not about to be so naive enough to think a genuine movie about Malcolm is going to come out of Hollywood. And I'm not about to believe that if it came out of Hollywood, a Spike Lee could bring it off. Right. He is a good movie maker, technically. He can make a good movie, technically. But from a point of view of substance, he has yet to make a good movie. He has made an interesting movie. I thought do the right thing was almost a stab at it. The other movies was a kind of a sex parades.
Right.
When you're obsessed in that manner, you're going to miss the major point in looking at the life of a Malcolm X. Now, I have been speaking about Malcolm X, lo, these many years, and I'm going to start this approach by remembering that first year after his death and the conversations we had before his death, the beautiful laughter of the man, and those spiritual visits that first year. I was in a quandary trying to get into the legitimate academic profession, if there is such a thing. Newly married, trying to support my family, bought no beat-up house in Harlem, trying to keep up my notes, struggling. And yet, that year, that conversation, then my question, what will you have me to do? If they cut you down, they're going to cut me down too. Then I remembered a statement by a South African conservative, a supposed conservative, Z.K. Matthews. Until we produce one sacrificial generation, no other generation will be free. I say, in rephrasing it, until we produce a dungaree generation, we're not entitled to a generation that will wear tuxedos. We've got to produce a generation committed to work. Now, why all of this commercialism around Malcolm X by people who have not read even a good article on Malcolm X? Why the attention to Malcolm X by white writers who are trying to make him something he never was or could have been? Why are they dragging out Sigmund Freud into this thing? Say he bombed his house because his father bombed his house. Say he had a gender problem. Dominant people, at least dominant European people, have such a gender problem they try to fasten on other people. They can't explain the world unless they bring in someone's sex life. They do not understand why sex makes them crazy and a few of us crazy. We can have a normal sex life and be crazy for other reasons. It is what they did not and have not understood about Malcolm X. Now, for the real reason for the assault on Malcolm X, the assault on an Nkrumah, the systematic destruction of African independent states, one after the other, the same thing true in the Caribbean islands, until no place in the world do you have a genuine African state. All imitation European states. No place. No state based on African traditions. Today, Ghana is trying to get back to itself. It's trying to find out what went wrong. It's now began to listen to the great traditional Ghanaians, now dead, that they wouldn't listen to when they were alive. Build a state on the values of the people. Take what you've got. Value what you've got. Treasure the land. Preserve the state for the people. A bunch of hustlers and Western educated people came into power who were willing to put Africa for sale to the highest bidder, especially the land, the most sacred thing in any nation. Because the land is the basis of nation. Now you have people commercializing on a Malcolm X who have not read or heard Message to the Grassroots. Between Message to the Grassroots and the Balance of the Bullets, you have the two most revolutionary statements made by a black man in the 20th century. So the statement relates to reclaiming the land and reclaiming yourself, bringing you out of program dependency so that you can be the masters of yourself. Other men have said it different ways at different times in our history. Some have said it, and because of their position, you call them Uncle Toms. Booker T. Washington was saying it one way, self-reliance. Du Bois was saying it another way, political coalition. Marcus Garvey was saying it another way, African unity and the African return. Malcolm X and Elijah Muhammad, and you don't separate the two, was saying it still another way by recognizing that we are a lost nation away from home. People will talk about a whole lot of things, talk about nation time without understanding nation responsibility. When you shout nation time, know what goes into the making of a nation. Know everything that goes into the making of a nation. A clenched fist have never built a nation. Take an inventory of everything that is needed in a nation. Then how many people do you need to build and maintain airports? How many harbor people do you need? How many engineers of how many varieties do you need? Are you out in the street with your fist clenched, and somebody need to be studying at Colorado Schools of Mines? You need some quiet time. Now this is essentially the message. Not just education, education, education. When all you're getting is training. Education is something that you can use to survive. And beyond survival, you've got to prevail. And you cannot be beggars at the door of someone else's house. You must be the master of your own house. When you make coalitions, you must make those coalitions that brings your people close to nationhood, close to security. Now there's a whole lot of talk in an academic hustler, Louis Gates' attack by a Jewish, black and Jewish historical alliance. This alliance never existed at all at no time. You have never had an alliance of substance with any people, not even left or right. A coalition is not an alliance. A temporary arrangement is not an alliance. I wish I was wrong, but no alliance existed between blacks and whites. Now I can go back now because I'm just old enough to remember I was active during the Scottsboro caves in the 30s. There was very good activities coming. People came among us, ate at our tables. That wasn't an alliance. We was the biggest show in town. Where else were they going to go? Who else's cause could they raise that kind of money on? You called it an alliance? When they got what they wanted, they disappeared. And you think, I've had an alliance, a historical alliance. A bunch of con men came among you and took your money and gone. Now, what's this got to do with Malcolm X? We got to understand how Malcolm X relates to the radical black ministry of the world. What is the relationship of Malcolm X to an Akhenaten? What's the relationship to Malcolm X and the radical black ministers in Africa? But more important, what's the relationship between Malcolm X's revolt and the revolt of Henry Highland Garnett, who said, my motto is resistance, resistance, resistance? What is the relationship between a Malcolm X and a Martin Delany? What is the relationship to Malcolm X and the call for the people, the colored people of the world, to take up arms? 1829. We can see Malcolm as a historical figure. Now, if we showed that on the film, how is this going to benefit people who want to hold power over you, especially over your mind? When you show that you can be free of them, you don't have to go to their studio to get money. You build your own studio and your own theater. Because you would be a nation then. And the concept of nation is the one thing they want to keep away from you.
Yes.
To make you dependent on their concept of nation. We are not talking about anyone who is anti-revolution. We're not talking about anybody who is anti-left. For 50 years, I've been trying to get this point across through some bunch of knuckleheads. I'm more left than you will ever be. But when I approach my people, I got to be left in a manner that communicates with my people, as you are left in a way that communicates with yours. And there's no point telling me that religion is the opiate of the people. Quietly, I believe you. I ain't stupid. I'm not going to go into a Baptist church and say a thing like this. If somebody cut my head off and throw it in the street. I believe in socialism just as much as anyone else. It's the most natural, most intelligent way to live. And when I become a socialist, the first thing I'm going to socialize is the Baptist church and the police. Because if those two are not on your side, your socialism ain't worth very much. So if I become a socialist, and I am, I'm going to be a socialist the black way. I'll go to the sisters and say, hey, sister, can you help me with this little socialism? And I can explain without any exaggeration. When Karl Marx said one thing and Christ said another thing, they were both saying practically the same thing. So we don't have a left-right argument in relationship to Malcolm X. But what we do have is a misunderstanding on the part of black people in relationship to European people who have a mission in this world, no matter what they say they believe politically, no matter what they say they believe religious. They want to control. And being socialists and communists do not keep them from wanting to be in control. So you don't have to fight them on the issue. You don't have the time or the energy. But you have to make sure that you are in control of your own destiny. Anytime any one of us tells our people and show our people the true face of power and what to do about it, he's either assassinated, driven to suicide, or driven to exile. One of the three things got to happen. Because if he succeeds, he's got to have power. And if he's got power, he's got to take it away from someone who took it away from you. If you see a revolutionist who is not in danger, challenge his revolutionary action. If you are a true revolutionist, you got to be in danger. Because you've got to challenge the establishment that sees you as a threat to their power. We went through some illusions, and Malcolm was trying to pull us out of these illusions. You think after the independence of Ghana, in the chain reaction of independence in Africa, do you think a whole Western industry based on mineral wealth of Africa, they're going to just automatically give this up? This was sweet. The yachts gonna give up those yachts, go give up those skyscrapers, gonna give up those diamonds, go give up those multi-million-dollar bank accounts because we threw our fists in the air as a black power. You have to be out of your mind. What you need to do is to look at Malcolm X several ways. And this is something I asked Spike Lee to consider in the 20 minutes he spent in my home. Look at his life in Nebraska. Look at the scene when they threw the mangled body of his father on that porch. Capture the expression on that small boy's face, tugging at his mother and asking, what has happened to Papa? Show us the making of the mind of Malcolm X. Something is planted in his mind. He's never going to forget. He's going to come through the mire. He's going to come through pimpism. He's going to come through hustlerism. But he's never going to forget. For something is planted in his mind. His manhood is challenged before he became a man. They had dared him to be a man. And he said, in spite of you, I'm going to be a man.
Yes.
And he knew then what a lot of us don't seem to know: a rope can swing two ways. And when you're going to take a life, you got to bring a life with you. Right. And be prepared to give up one. What he was trying to restore to us is essentially what colonialism and slavery took away. They took away the belief in our essential manhood and womanhood. We have no argument with Europe except we don't want them on our back. We have no argument with some of the ideologies coming from Europe except we want to do it our way. We don't think Sister Sarah, who want to go to the Baptist church and shout, we don't think she is incapable of being a good communist or a good socialist. She is anyway. See her in the community, how she divides things, how she worries about things, how she visits the sick. That's humane. Because we produce the world's first sharing societies. We didn't produce any ideology to go with it. We just lived it out. You think it started when Carl something or another dogmatized it and formalized it. But it was there all along. So was Christianity. Saying that in Nkrumah, a Malcolm X, the life of a Lumumba, tried to give us back something and tried to jumpstart our emotions so we can believe in ourselves again, because our ultimate goal is the same as that of all people who walk this earth. We must be sovereign again. We must control nations again. Not control them to be against anyone, but be for ourselves again. We, once free, managing nations, bringing security to our own people, we will be the world's last chance and best chance for peace. We will not duplicate. We will not duplicate what Europe has done. We will not form a black branch of the Ku Klux Klan. We are not that stupid. We will not waste time that way. I am not talking about forgiving and forgetting. We will be prepared to deal with anyone who threatens us. But we ain't going out of our way to prove our manhood by preying on innocent people. We don't have that kind of time and energy. We can build 10,000 cities with the energy. The European has blown it in the world. He had the opportunity to give man a new kind of humanity. Now let me conclude this, because really I don't know how to conclude anything once the Baptist preacher spirit gets into me. Let's look at Malcolm X again. Let's look at him more critically. Let's read and criticize some of these bad books about Malcolm. Let's read some of the fairly good books about Malcolm. Let's look at this Malcolm X industry and how they're exploiting his name and his image, the over-commercialization of Malcolm. People selling everything, not reading a single book or a single article. Let's take him seriously. Let's pay him that respect. Let's listen to his own words, and let us read his speeches seriously. I won't convince you that he was a hater, he was an anti-Semitic. Why somebody tell me one, before I shuffle off this earth, what in the hell is a Semitic? If I'm going to be anti-Semitic, shouldn't I at least know what a Semitic is? I don't know and they don't know. What in essence was Malcolm X saying? That you were a people once, you stood tall, you ruled nations all by yourself. Oppression has reduced you to the point and taken so much of your confidence that you now don't even make the safety pin to hold your diaper together. You the people who erected the pyramids. You the people who produced the social thought out of which came the world's religions. Now grappling before inadequate people, the rapers of the world, not understanding that somewhere in the march of life, we reached the crossroads and made the wrong turn. Let's go back to that crossroad and read those signboards again.
Yes, sir.
Let's read Malcolm X's word again. Let's look for the word Pan-Africanism and don't apologize for it.
That's right.
Let's look for the word African world nationalism and don't apologize for it. Let's look for the word self-reliance and believe in it. And let's remember what has been taken from your historical memory. Over half of history was over before you knew a European was in the world. You did manage without him once. You might be able to do it again. I will close by asking you and reminding you, I always say that if you are sincere, you will start tomorrow's work today. Let's stop jiving. I don't know who else the Lord is with you, man or woman. And I just assume believe in woman or man. Stand before whoever you're willing to accept. That's a job of liberating to do. So here I am, Lord. Send me. I'm ready. Thank you.
Brothers, since we're going to move right along because most of our speakers are here, and we want to try to get them in because we have something very special we want you, some of you who really want to take this thing to the serious max, to deal with tonight. And we want to get that in. So we're going to try to have these next presentations brief so that we can then go into something we want to discuss with you and get your feeling on it, because we always try to approach our people in a democratic manner. And there's some work we want to do this evening that we'd like for you to share in, and we need some time to do that. At this particular time, I'm going to call somebody who hasn't been with us before so that we can get a chance to hear him, because what we want to do is try to give you a broad view. And a brother who I've known for quite some time, and you might have seen him a couple of times on Like It Is when he was giving you the scenario surrounding Malcolm's assassination and the aftermath and the workings of the Organization of Afro-American Unity. He's a brother who works very, very quietly and who was a dedicated member to the OAAU and worked closely with Brother Malcolm. And we're trying to get him over here for some time. And we did a program earlier this year in February where we got a chance to share some information. So at this particular time, I'd like for you to hear from Brother Earl Grant.
Good evening. I guess the best thing that's happened to you this afternoon is you had an opportunity to hear Professor Clark speak. And can you hear me? No?
This one.
Which one? This one? Okay. I said, I guess the best thing that's happened so far this afternoon is that you had a chance to hear Professor Clark speak, because his activities in our behalf go back well over half a century. And I've had the opportunity coming to New York City. When I did, I met him and J.A. Rogers and Richard B. Moore and Earl Sweeting. I was just in the right place at the right time. And he's given you so much, but I would just spend my few minutes telling you about some of the events leading up to the assassination of Malcolm from our perspective, and also some of the things that took place right after that. For example, about a week before the assassination, he was on a radio broadcast, and we were out in the hallway. He was inside the studio, and there were policemen out in the hallway, plainclothesmen. And one of our brothers was standing there with his front coat open, just hanging open. And you could see his pistol. And there's a cop standing about 5 feet in front of him and looking right at him. And I suppose policemen also check for vision. But he acted as if he didn't see anything. So when we were coming out of the studio, I told Malcolm about it. I said, you know, that's strange behavior for a policeman, especially with the type of people we were and the kind of pressure we were under. And so Malcolm made note of that and said that just indicates what the game is, that it's not going to be legal. So you don't even have to worry about going to court. You're not going to make it. So after when we got to the ballroom that day, I had put all this in the book, at least I think I did. I told you what happened, how the police were outside. They weren't inside. They were all lined up outside the building. And then after when the shooting broke out, they had this mass crowd of people rushing out of the building. And so we finally got a little bit quiet in there. The police came in later, and they just kind of wandered around like they were lost or at a beach party or something, and not concerned at all about what had just happened. And it took us about half an hour to get him over to Columbia Presbyterian Hospital, which is directly across the street. You would think they could have done it a lot faster than that. Then when we were getting him onto this stretcher thing and out of there, when we got him over to the hospital, they immediately blocked the front and wouldn't let any of us in. So in order to get his wife in, we had to take her around to the side of the hospital and to a side entrance to get her into the building. That's just some of the things that went on that day. But as Professor Clark was saying, a revolution is more than just, hollering gawa. We had a plan on what to do because we all knew that this was going to happen to us eventually, and we had to have something to do, someplace to go. So he said everybody should always have a passport and a bank account. So that when the event took place, I immediately went and slept someplace else. I didn't go home. In fact, I didn't go home for a long time after that. And I was at the Apollo Theater one night, and a well-known black lawyer whom you all know, he's heavy in broadcasting, stopped me in the lobby of the Apollo and said, "Where have you been?" I said, "I've been around." He said, "Well, you've got to get out of here." He said, "There's somebody high up in the police department says that you're next. So they have something planned for you." So he told me that night, it was the night they had the fundraiser for Malcolm's family. And 3 days later, I was in Ghana. But see, something like that doesn't happen by magic. That happens by planning. See, where I was going was already planned. How I'd get my ticket paid for was planned. How I'd get to the airport was planned. Who would pick me up on the other side was planned. Every single step was planned in advance. So you can't hit the panic button when something go down. You got to know what you're going to do long before that. So when I got to Ghana, I started working for the Nkrumah government, doing a lot of construction work over there. And I met a lot of people, and I found out truly that a good name is better than gold. When I landed in Ghana, all I needed was Malcolm. And things I couldn't even dream of was offered to me. And it was always offered to me by high governmental officials of many different governments that had embassies in Ghana, not just the Ghana government, but a lot of people were there. And he said, "What do you need?" And they asked another group from another little country down in the Caribbean that they hate so much. You know which one that must be. They play that Afro-Cuban music, They asked, "Where's your family?" I said, "Well, they're in the United States." He says, "Can they come over here?" I says, "I don't know." He says, "Don't worry, we can get them out. So if there's any problem, they'll just disappear. And next thing they'll be here." I said, "We know how to do that." But the main thing, I guess I want to tell you anything, is that whatever you do, you have to have a plan. Not only what you want to do, but you also have to have a contingency plan. You have to have a fallback position. You can't just run out there saying, "We're going to do this," and then if it collapses, then you holler, "Oh my God," because that doesn't work. You have to know what you're going to do. And their opinion, you have a lot of friends all over the world, because this country has stepped on everybody. And what is usually not brought up in meetings like this is how this country has stepped on Europeans, how it colonized Western Europe after World War II, to the extent that Charles de Gaulle was one of the most important revolutionary leaders of the 20th century, because he broke France free from this country. He pulled the French army out of NATO and made them move NATO headquarters out of Paris. And they hated him just as much as they hate Castro. They were really hot with him. And a lot of your European countries are still on their knees. You take Italy. Italy, I think, has had 51 governments since World War II, and this country has interfered in every election they've had since then. So you have all kinds of friends. They don't all look like you. But a lot of them, they have their own grievances. And when you sit down with people like that, you don't expect them to be in love with you, but you just have a common cause. That's all. Well, it's nice being with you. As he said, I'm unfamiliar with this thing. I sure didn't come with a prepared speech. I even got here late. But about this movie, I guess I should comment about that. John said Spike spent about 20 minutes with him. Well, I went over to Brooklyn to this very popular restaurant over there. It's a black restaurant. We had a club sandwich together, so that's the extent of my having anything to do with the movie, so don't blame me for anything that goes wrong with it. I don't know anything about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brother Earl. At this particular time, we want to hear from another person who has been very instrumental in forcing this whole question of Malcolm's legacy, forward. Very quietly and in the midst of some of the most reactionary political establishment personalities, this particular individual has been able to create a situation where a lasting monument can be given to Brother Malcolm X, and even has expanded that to other areas, other individuals. Brother Abubadika Sonny Carson probably was the first one to get a street renamed for Malcolm X in Brooklyn, when Reed Avenue was changed over to Malcolm X Boulevard. He did the same thing with a school. We have the El Hajj Malik El Shabazz School, and both of these things occurred during the Koch administration. It's very interesting to go to the Blue Room and see Koch saying how much he appreciated Malcolm, and he was going to sign this bill right away and asked Brother Sonny could he come and take the picture with him, and Sonny said, I'm not in politics, just sign the bill and get this thing over with. And of course, like Sonny Carson is also responsible for Sumner Avenue being renamed into Marcus Garvey Boulevard. The reason I say this is because, when the mayoralty campaign came up, people may believe they never heard of Sonny Carson in any kind of relative manner that they had to deal with, and particularly the Committee to Honor Black Heroes, which had been instrumental in dealing with all of those politicians. As a result of that initiative, the New African People's Organization then took up the cry in Harlem that show honor and self-respect, changed Lenox Avenue to Malcolm X. And those of you who came from the subway know that you came out on Malcolm X Boulevard. These things are not in the rap magazines. You're not going to find them in no rap songs unless you're talking about X-Clan, and that's another matter altogether. The point is that a lot of this to people who really put forward the avenues, where these kind of ideas could be in the minds of our people so they would want to see these things done, those people are not given the credit for it, but that's what we're here for today, because we're not going to allow Spike or anybody else, that later on you'll see one of the reasons why we are very fearful of when these actors and these theatrical people get involved and try to interpret our history, because their careers come before anything else. To play Malcolm X is just another role, and then they go somewhere else and do something different. At this particular time, we'd like to present to you Brother Abubadika Sonny Carson.
I'm getting old. That's right. I'm not ashamed to say it. I don't go for these kind of things too much anymore. Tired of talk. I think we like to listen to our own. I don't know. Sometimes it bothers me to stand up on podiums anymore and talk about accomplishments when we ain't accomplished anything. I mean, it hasn't even begun yet. I mean, people all around town are bragging about what they've done to preserve the bones that have been lifted up out of the ground by crackers. And we applaud it. I don't understand. I mean, there's a brother sitting in this auditorium here who we seem to have forgotten too, who was there in the auditorium, who was Malcolm's educational man, who was there when Malcolm was killed, and who was the first person to join the OAU. That's Brother Herman Ferguson. Why don't we recognize that? In fact, Herman was just hit 18 additional months by 2 elderly crackers on a parole board, knowing what they were doing, and we were at that time protesting Rodney King's verdict, but nobody did anything about Herman Ferguson's. So, you know, we just have short memories, and that bothers me too a lot. I spoke to another young brother, he's not so young anymore, last night, who was the very image of Malcolm and Malcolm's deeds. And he said to say greetings to all of you. His name is Matula Shakur. I think it's sad that we have to continue to talk about the deeds. I know that it's important for a people to know their history. I think it's sad also to know that our children enter those schools and are miseducated. They're given the wrong history. That's because we don't control our history. Spike told us that he has waited all his life to do Malcolm. And now we'll see what he's done to Malcolm. I think Negroes are programmed to deliver to the crackers everything that we do the way they want them to deliver it. That's why they are prepared to do so. And we don't realize how dangerous education can be. Because here we are, a captive people who have forgotten that we're captive, using the captor's language to communicate and to think with, and we seem to be proud sometimes to say that that person was educated and got a degree and don't even understand that he's been sent out here as an agent for the crackers. That's what's so sad. I mean, anytime a people who have the kind of history that we have, who have to go to white folks to find out about their own history, we got to be a sad people. So I don't understand how we continue to sit and have and get off on words about our past when we are in charge of doing something about our history while we live. And so I don't understand how we have not committed ourselves to do whatever it is that we say we must do by whatever means necessary. I think that Malcolm's life belonged to us, and that his life story is one that we have to portray and to give back to our children. I think I kind of succeeded a little bit because my son calls his group X-Clan. And I'm always astounded when I look at young people today because they seem to have adopted a new kind of language. And there are people who put that down and don't understand that that's revolutionary in its own self, because it's really about messing up the language that we have had to take upon to communicate with each other. I had the fortune of coming to a couple of Malcolm's rallies, one on 116th Street and maybe two or three on 116th Street, but one in Brooklyn on Madison Street, Bedford Avenue. And I was always amazed at the kind of feelings that Malcolm caused me to have when I listened to him. I could stand and listen for hours just at his way of expressing our dilemma. he was someone whom has caused me to be what I am. If there wasn't a Malcolm, I'd still be in the post office or working in transit. But here I am, free, liberated, because Malcolm made me what I am today. I think it's time for us to understand where we're at, because this city, and I travel a great deal now, we Africans in this city, who should be ahead of the other Africans around the country because we live in the #1 city, don't seem to be the #1 blacks as far as I'm concerned when it comes to being organized politically. And I hate to have to say that to us because I live in this city and I'm probably never going to live anyplace else but in this city. So I think it's time for us to really commit ourselves to changing it all at once. I mean, making a move that will change this whole thing and bring us right to where we're supposed to be, getting ready to let our young people move past us into the 21st century. That's what it's supposed to be all about. We have to make sure that crackers respect us in this town. And if they don't, then we can forget about exploding into the 21st century. We just move meekly into the 21st century. Because crackers ain't scared of us. They ain't afraid of nothing we do. We talk, and we don't even back that up. And I think it's time for us to make sure that they understand that that was only a move on our part to make them think that that's what it was all about, when in fact that's what it wasn't what it's all about. So what I'm saying is that when it comes to our history, then we must do something about that. Spike. I mean, and I remember I said something about language. There's some things that we cannot say because there are folks in here going to call up LIB on Monday and tell everybody what was said. So I ain't saying it. Spike is like a drink, or you know, they used to have a drink they used to spike. If there is no other course for us, I think that it's a mandate on our part that we have to say to our people in our community that Spike Lee's version of the Malcolm X autobiography shall not be seen by us. So it seems to me, folks, that we should get ready to make sure that we put the energy behind that, because what else do we have going for us? A lot of talk, an opportunity to express ourselves in some of the rallies that are called, or on LIB or some other kind of medium. I'm saying that it's time for us to make sure that that movie is not seen by black people in our communities, and we have to begin to make sure that that happens by any means necessary. I'm prepared to assist in that effort, but I don't want to assist in an effort that is faggoty. You know what I mean? And brothers, you should know what I mean, brothers, because you see, we're the first one who always say, especially in this city, that we're critical of what somebody else is doing. And yet, we have not been given the authority to do that and to say that. I listen to people all around the city come up and tell me about what should be happening down there on Elk Street and Twain Street and Broadway. And I ain't seen none of them. And it just amazes me continually how we give ourselves the authority to criticize things that other folks do. And we aren't prepared to do the same thing ourselves. I mean, we should be ashamed of ourselves. Look at it. There's a brother sitting here, been here all these years, and ain't nobody did nothing. I know that something's being planned tomorrow, but ain't nobody did nothing about saluting that brother who did all that. Father Lucas, stand up, man. How much study you all owe that guy? Father Lars Lucas, man. Father Lars Lucas. Father Lars Lucas. Father Lars Lucas. I don't know. It wouldn't have happened in Brooklyn. I'm sorry to have to say that. Some of us would have made sure that that wouldn't happen. I don't mean him not leaving. I'm just saying that somebody has not made a move to do what they're supposed to do. Now, on Sunday at 12 o'clock, it's the last Mass that Father Lucas is going to be in charge of in Harlem. At Resurrection. So we say, let's make the street so congested that we can't get in there, that Father Lucas got to come out to finish his Mass outside. So what do you say, folks? 12 o'clock. 12 o'clock on a Sunday. Finally, 151st Street and
Between Adam Clayton Powell and McCool's place.
you know where all the Negroes used to live years ago. I know about that. I know about that. Yeah, 151st and McComb's place and 8th Avenue, right? 7th Avenue, see? What do I know? Adam Clayton Powell Boulevard, I think, y'all. Anyway, I think that the movie is about to come out in November. I don't think so. I don't think it's November 20th. I think that it's time for us to begin to organize, make sure that that doesn't happen. And if it does happen, then there shouldn't be none of us going inside the theaters to see what's happening. I think that Malcolm deserves that. We owe it to him. And I think that as long as we can take care of our own history, then we can always say that we're a people. Remember, a people without any knowledge of their own history can never be a people. So remember that a people without control of their own history can never be a people either. People, thank you very much. Peace.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sonny Carson. The next person to present here is a person that you're familiar with and come to Harriet Tubman schools for most of the events we have been given here, and also who have been involved in mass actions in New York for the last more than 25 years. It's a person that has been in the forefront of raising up the issue of Malcolm X and revolutionary ideological concepts and actions, because we believe that theory has to actually go with practice, and a person that understands the importance of the historical input that Dr. John Henry Clark has been able to give us for so many years, and also then to translate that into something that will bring the people in the street applying it in a way that would be able to make our people become more unified and more revolutionary conscious. So I don't even really have to even go in much more to say who this person is, but will you please welcome at this time Sister Viola Plummer for the December 12th movement for the Harriet Tubman Fan New Hampshire Collective.
Peace, brothers and sisters. I'm going to try to do several things in terms of what I want to talk with you about this evening. I want to pay, again, tribute to Dr. Clark. And I want to pay tribute to Dr. Clark for a number of reasons, all of which I am going to present to you in our discussion this evening. First and foremost, that we must everywhere and always name ourselves. Dr. Clark talked about he was a communist and a socialist by his definition. See, and I want to make special note of that only because that we have allowed crackers to tell us what a communist and a socialist is. See, I want to pay tribute to Dr. Clark for talking about a man who had a mission, and a man that was mortal, and a man that was fallible, and a man that was true. That was true to his own being and made no compromises. I want to pay tribute to Dr. Clark because he reminds us that it is only in our honesty, of our appraisal of who we are, that we could even read El-Hajj Malik Shabazz, Malcolm X. See, I want us to discuss from this point on, what does it mean to talk about crackers being able to create an image? Because see, there are those of us who believe it don't matter, that Spike ought to be left alone because he is a young black man doing what his art dictates, and that those of us who say that there is no art, there is no history, there is no definition of us given to us by crackers, and that Hollywood and its millions, and the New York Times and Macy's and Denzel Washington, who profit by naming us, who profit by image making, okay, that it is what dictates Spike Lee's art. Consider, brothers and sisters, Spike Lee said to us through the media, if you want to see or talk about or investigate what I'm doing, pay your $7.50 and talk to me afterwards. Spike Lee said to us, his film would not be made by a committee, and we hastened to agree. And we told him that was absolutely correct, that it would not be made by a committee of African people. But as sure as the sun brings morning, Warner Brothers, Time Warner, got a committee. And the committee came with $40 million. And the committee made the film. And the committee hired actors. And the image that the actor is going to create is an image that Hollywood at this point in time says is necessary. And that is that Malcolm and every other black man who stood on 2 feet and told crackers, no, I will never forget the lynching of my father, and that I define what is legal and illegal, and that I define which way forward for my people. not one of those men would Hollywood hire an actor to portray, because the image that they're going to create is that Malcolm is an actor. And today or yesterday in the 1960s, he was the militant. He was the last of the angry young men. And in and that will be portrayed by Denzel Washington. And in 1992, he'll be a gay lover. Okay? Because Denzel Washington's next image. And don't say we don't transfer one role to the next. And yes, some of us are going to believe that Denzel Washington is Malcolm. That's Hollywood's gig. That's what it's all about. And when he plays the lover of some white boy, the transference is going to be there. Make no mistake about it. Make no mistake about what's afoot. What we have tried to do is to say not so much that we emulate or take credit for or walked with Malcolm, but as we learned from John Henry Clark, we learned from Malcolm. We learned from Malcolm. In the December 12th movement, one of the things that we pushed for and pulled teeth for and took abuse for, when we didn't measure up to this or that revolutionary's idea of who we ought to be, meaning that some of us in the December 12th movement called ourselves communists by our definition and not by the definition of crackers. We took abuse for that, but that's okay, because we understood that one of the things that was our responsibility was to carry on the legacy. What did we learn? We learned that if we are to be free, we got to carry on the legacy. We chose, as a part of that, Malcolm's teaching on internationalizing our struggle. And yes, Sonny, I hope you didn't leave. Yes, we've got to do it by talking to one another. Yes, we do. We cannot get a 30-second bite on television that our people watch. They will not have us front and center of the news or the Post or the Times or any of those papers that our people read. They're not going to make a movie, a videotape, a television pilot of Africans talking about the absolute necessity by armed struggle to overthrow this oppressive system. They're not going to make a movie about that. For us, then, the question is, how do we get to the people? Because, brothers and sisters, it is the masses of people who make revolution. It is the masses of people who make revolution. And it is our job, those of us who believe they've learned from Malcolm, to talk to each other about the necessity of doing that. Talk about that in words and deeds. For the last 4.5 years, we took that to the United Nations. And I was so pleased to hear Earl Grant and Dr. Clark talk about Ghana and Cuba, because it was the Ghanaians and the Cubans who directed us through that process because of their unity with Malcolm. We consistently went there to raise the issue of the violation of human rights of Africans in this country. Because we wanted to be on television? No. But because we are convinced that people will not take up arms for civil rights, for political rights, but for their human right to land independence and self-determination, which are human rights, they will do that. So that is our trek to the UN. The posters, the caps, the buttons are ways in which we know we can get your attention. And we also know that if we do not keep alive the essence of what Malcolm taught us, then Hollywood will reinvent it. And there will be Spike Lee this time, and there will be Spike Lee next time, and there will be Spike Lee the time after that. Because it is only us who will keep the message to the grassroots. It is only us who's going to interpret the ballad of the bullet. And brothers and sisters, it is necessary for us to talk about that, and it's also necessary for us to get out in the street and demonstrate that that is what we are talking about. We have said this evening, and you will hear, Sister Olive, that our trek to the UN and the General Assembly this fall is to raise the issue of human rights. And one right a people have is the right to their culture and to their history. Columbia University has said, yes, all but the Audubon. We're going to tear that down because it is a, quote, eyesore. Just like Hollywood said, it is time to make a movie of Malcolm X because who he is an eyesore. We got to create a new image. So Columbia, taking up their part because it's all about money, said we're going to tear down the Audubon. What we want to say to you this evening is when we get finished talking with each other, we want all of you who are sitting here to come take a walk with us to the Audubon. Y'all with that?
Absolutely.
See, because the purpose is that if we talk to each other in order to learn, then our next responsibility is to teach. And that if we could teach nothing else from this evening, the brothers and sisters that we will encounter in the street this evening will understand that there are some Africans in this city who understand the image making, who say, no, you're not going to get away with it without a fight, that we're prepared, at least at this level, to raise that fight, to raise that idea, to spread the word, because I firmly believe that if we do not reach the masses of our people, we extend and only extend the time of our oppression, because we're going to be free. Our job at this point in time is to hasten that day. We believe, brothers and sisters, that the legacy of Malcolm is land, independence, and liberation, freedom or death.
Mr. Viola Plummer. Right now, a dying institution. Finkelstein is not making any money, and because a boycott was launched against Macy's because of his treatment against two black people some years ago, and even though they tried to modify their relationship, most people kept on staying away. And yet now we have a boutique called Spike's Joint, where you can go in there and buy a black jacket with a big red, white, and blue X on the back of it for $375. You can also buy some other things too that are identified with Spike's Joint, which is one of the reasons why we raised up early on that Malcolm's legacy is not a Spike Lee joint. We're telling you this is very, very serious. How do you think that Spike Lee was able to get into the Audubon and film in there when our people were getting locked up for trying to even get in themselves or trying to hold the place? Why do you think the state intervened on behalf of Warner Brothers to allow Spike Lee to go inside the Audubon and shoot his picture? Why do you think that in Mecca, the Saudi government allowed non-believers, including Spike, to enter into the holy city and to interrupt the Hajj so they could film a movie? Do you understand? Why do you think that even though Nelson Mandela was advised, that maybe he shouldn't become involved in the film, and was against it, that at the last minute people put pressure to have Nelson Mandela in the end of the film, where they're trying to say that Malcolm's legacy carries on to this very day, so that Mandela is playing a cameo role? Why do you think all these things happen? Do you know other producers that would get this kind of carte blanche treatment? You got to understand really what's going on. This is a very significant thing. And the reason why they have done this at this time is because they are trying to circumvent the motion that the people are dealing with in the street, because more and more young people are moving toward what the ideas that Malcolm espoused.
Yes.
Those of us who were there at the time and know how critical those ideas and how many of them came from, particularly like, say, people like Carlos Cooks, who came from the Dominican Republic and brought a black consciousness here. And that is what we're trying to deal with up there in Washington Heights now. Before there was any uprising, where we're trying to bring the Dominican community together with the African American community and the Puerto Rican community, showing that here you have a son of the Dominican Republic who was responsible for carrying on Garvey's ideas. And if Malcolm was alive today, he'd tell you that, because that's where he got it from. And so it's important for us to know these things. And at the time when all these things are converging, we now have Hollywood saying that it is time for this movie to put up $40 million. And I asked you the question I asked you before. Do you really believe that Hollywood would put up $40 million to make a movie about Malcolm X that would make young black men want to be revolutionaries? There's no way. I mean, the question answers itself. And that's the bottom line. That's what you got to understand what it is. No matter what you go in and see, it's all be so that the next movie, because Denzel was to make this role, and we didn't say anything about Denzel, but if Denzel now In the next movie, he's playing the black gay lover of a white man. And Bruce Perry, who wrote that book about Malcolm, that slanderous book, trying to make the inference that saying he did a psychological analysis of Malcolm, and Malcolm was trying to repress homosexual feelings. What do you think there's a connection between this transferal that Viola talked about in that book? You got to understand there's an assault coming down. We stand nothing to gain. We ask Spike for nothing. There was nothing to be gained. In fact, we lose a lot because people get very upset when we say these things because they don't want to believe that there's some kind of conspiratorial activity going on. You can't even use the word conspiracy. You got to, use it in another tense so you can at least accept it. But the fact is that it is. It's very, very clear. One of the people who has been largely responsible for maintaining a whole repository of information on Malcolm X is our professor and brother Preston Wilcox from Afram Associates. Many times you get mail, you don't know where it came from. Well, this time when you get mail from Preston, it's usually something about race. It's about our people, about what we should be doing. And so that's very, very important. And he also deals with the Malcolm X lovers, lovers being that the people who love Malcolm X. And that's important. And from day one, has been down with us on this whole issue, because it would be very easy to leave this whole thing alone and go about your business.
Lambe, due to the lateness of the hour, I'm just going to make a brief statement. But one observation I want to make, I really believe that if Malcolm was living now, he would not permit Spike to make a film about him.
Right, that's right.
If you read the encounter between he and Alex Haley, he said to Alex, when he finally agreed that Alex should write his book, he said, I like you because you will not try to out-Malcolm me. And if you look at what happened to Spike has become an international figure largely because he's making a film on Malcolm X. He's become an expert on black issues and so forth. So I don't think that Malcolm would have allowed him to make the film. Secondly, I guess I'll never forget the insult which Spike laid on Brother Baraka, because he said something about who is Brother Baraka, I think he is, trying to become a chairman of the African American Committee. And when he said that, I remembered that 20 years ago, a German scholar told me that he had found 1,800 entries in the literature on Baraka. That was 20 years ago. And if he had no respect for an elder who's made that kind of contribution to us, then he should not be dealing with us. Now, as far as I'm concerned, the film is going to be made, and I think probably Hollywood decided to make it because they read Alex Haley's book, The Autobiography of Malcolm X. Because in a sense, Alex cleaned up Malcolm's image. Some of you who were not around when Malcolm lived, a lot of the middle-class blacks were afraid of Malcolm. They couldn't even say his name. They would slur it. I remember one brother went down to the mosque one night, and Malcolm was railing about white people, and the brother had to get up and walk out because the next morning he had to go on a job with white people. He didn't know how to behave. In fact, in the day's paper, the brother who's playing the Honorable Elijah was quoted as saying that some of the Honorable Elijah's messages were so strong, he had difficulty saying. And the guy's only acting out the part. And he said, I can still be what I want to be. So the point I'm trying to make is that most people who follow Malcolm are following him after his death. When he lived, most people were afraid of him. And I think because of Alex Haley's book, and if you read it very carefully, it's almost as though Malcolm grew to become almost a white man. Because many of us who now accept Malcolm accept him for the same reasons that white people accept him. That is, when he talked about the Honorable Elijah's adultery, those of us who were afraid of the Muslims began to follow Malcolm. When he wrote the letter back from Mecca and we misunderstood his attitude towards whites, those of us who were afraid of separation began to follow him. White people did the same thing. And when he resigned from the nation, many of us began to follow him while we weren't following him before. And I'm always amazed when I think about Malcolm that he had more people standing on the corners listening to him than he ever got into the mosque. In fact, I read a statement the other day where one of the Muslim brothers asked, how is it they love Malcolm so much but they hate his religion? Now, what I'm trying to point out is that in my judgment, a lot of people didn't know the person that Malcolm really was, particularly because of the major media. For instance, a lot of the white media refer to him as ex-convict, ex-criminal. In my judgment, Malcolm participated in criminal activities, but he never became a criminal in character. Do you understand that distinction? So I give the example, when I was a kid, I used to climb up on the coal car and throw off coals to my mother and father because we had no coal. They never considered me a criminal, even though if I got caught, the white folks would have said. And I think that's very important to understand because if Malcolm had ever really become a criminal, he would not have died a poor man. Now, secondly, I don't believe that Malcolm ever really submitted totally to the Muslims. Because I don't think he could have blown the whistle on the Honorable Elijah if he had been totally submitted to the Muslims. Malcolm was against all oppression, including his own. Most of us have never met a man like Malcolm X. And I'm even talking about those of us in the movement. I was sitting up here a few minutes ago and thinking about Herman. He's one of the people I met in my life who the moment I met him, I knew I was meeting a man. Or Sonny Carson. The moment I met him, I knew I had met a man. And if you ever met Malcolm, you met a man. One of the reasons I really felt that Spike could not produce a Malcolm film, because he was not a warrior. Malcolm never became middle class. He never wanted to be president. In my judgment, he died as a field nigger, one who loved his people. I have a million stories from people in Harlem of Malcolm walking up, sitting down, talking with him, never even identifying who he is, and then they asked him like 2 weeks later, by the way, I was talking to him, who are you? I'm Malcolm X. He was essentially a servant of the people. He gave his life to us. If you ever talk with him, he was asking you questions, making you think. In fact, there's a story about him coming into the airport at Kennedy, and that was before the white reporters were afraid of him. And so the white boys gave their questions to the one brother who was in the group of reporters. So Malcolm got off the plane. The brother asked all 7 questions. And then Malcolm said to him right away, brother, don't you have a question of your own? Man was very perceptive. In fact, there was a story in the day's paper about Ralph Cooper, how some of you might not know, but on the day when he was assassinated, he had invited a lot of Harlem leaders who were not nationalists to the meeting. because he wanted all of us in the OAAU. He really believed in the family of man. And he had told Ralph Cooper, you don't have to come over early. I'll call you when it's time for you to go on. I know you're busy, and when we get ready for you, we'll call you. And when the lady called Ralph to say it's okay to come over, he heard shots over the telephone. And that was how he knew that Malcolm was assassinated. He called they called him and tell him. And what I'm saying is that Malcolm was a very sensitive human being. Very sensitive human being. Now, in relation to that, I was sort of embarrassed tonight when Sonny had to introduce Father Lucas from back there, had to introduce Herman Ferguson from back there. I feel in a real Afrocentric way, hey, Brother Baraka, that when people like Father Lucas and people like Herman Ferguson are here, that we ought to have some kind of way to usher them down front and make sure that they're introduced. And we ought to show that kind of respect for them, because to the whole thing about Spike, he bogarted the film on the basis that he was black. And when he did that, he was standing on all of our shoulders. He was standing on Stokely's shoulders, standing on Baraka's shoulders, standing on my shoulders, Sonny's shoulders, all the brothers who've been fighting for the rights of black people and for black control and for black autonomy and for black sovereignty. And he probably, if he'd have been smart, he would have developed a committee among us so that when Time Warner came, he had to deal with us and not him. We would have made sure that he had the last cut that we want, not the cut they want. Now, the final thing that I'd like to see in the film, in addition to clarifying who Malcolm was, that he was not a criminal, that he didn't totally submit to the Muslim religion, that he ultimately became a member of the international religion, and he died, in fact, a member of the international religion, and that he was much more of a threat to the world than he was solely as a member of the Muslims in Chicago. And I'd like that point to be made. I also would like the point to be made about the contribution which the Nation of Islam made to all of us. For instance, they established a right of brothers to practice religions and behind the walls. In fact, every now and then I read about a group in the country that's having trouble practicing religion, and I send them a copy of the transcript I have from the case in New York State. And Malcolm was the one who used to go up and give the instructions to the brothers, and then they would recruit people in the prisons. And one brother I know who was a part of it indicates they recruited 1,800 brothers and sisters in the prisons, from inside the prisons. And I'm sure that's much more than they recruited on the corner of 7th Avenue and 125th Street. I mean, the Honorable Elijah was very skillful in getting so-called social outcasts to stand up and become somebody. In fact, I spent a lot of time with a lot of brothers who don't like the idea that I'm trying to document Malcolm's life and so forth. They keep saying to me, why aren't they making a film on the Honorable Elijah? Why are they making a film on the student and not on the teacher? And the more I talk to them, the more I realize that they miss Malcolm for the same reasons we miss him, except for the first time in many of their lives, Malcolm gave them a sense of importance, gave them something to do every day. Like one brother tells a story about how Malcolm said to him, open the meeting today. And the brother said, listen, I never opened a meeting before in my life. He said, open the meeting. So the brother went up front and was opening the meeting. He figured he'd be up there 5 minutes. He looked up, Malcolm had left the room. He talked for 45 minutes. Malcolm came back, sat down, and when he told me this story about a year and a half ago, he said, nobody ever listened to me that long in my life. And so when they talk about missing Malcolm, they're talking about all the opportunities that he provided to them to make a contribution to their own people on a day-to-day basis. And it's interesting, their feeling is that because he disobeyed the Honorable Elijah, that, quote, he almost committed suicide. Because it's not within their frame of reference that someone would disobey the Honorable Elijah. And I'm saying he was not disobeying. He never became a total part of it. He never submitted. He talked about how he could remain a Muslim as long as he could do the correct thing. In fact, he suspended more Muslims for fornication, coming late, stealing, whatever things people did to get suspended. He suspended more people than any minister in the country. In fact, one of the things these brothers are always feeding back to me is, like most of them were on suspension of 1 to 4 when Malcolm left the nation. That is, you're out for a year, you can't come to the mosque, and then for 4 years you come into the mosque, but you can't take any kind of leadership role. And they still say to me, how's it he wanted us to do 1 to 4 and he couldn't do 90 days? And I'm saying his standards were so high, and it's impossible for people who don't have those kind of standards to understand it. And the final point I want to make is that we keep talking about Malcolm as a political figure, which he was, but I like to think of Malcolm as a religious figure. A man who had high moral values, high standards, a man you could set your clock by, a man who was teaching and sharing and caring. I'm reminded of Che Guevara's statement. He said that revolutionaries are driven by feelings of love. And I think that when we think of all these young people walking around with X on their hats, in fact, some of the people in California who were doing drive-by killings had an X on their hat, that if we help them to understand that to say that you care about Malcolm and you respect him is to in some way emulate who he was, to stand for the kind of things he stood for, to exemplify the way he tried to live his life. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brother Preston Wilcox. At this particular time, we're going to have a sister who has been very instrumental in the whole struggle around the Audubon Ballroom, has taken a very upfront leadership role in that, in organizing people and getting people to come involved around the issue of saving the Audubon and denying Columbia University an opportunity to put a biotech center there, biological experimental center. So at this particular time, will you please welcome Sister Olive Armstrong.
Thank you, Olambe. Peace, brothers and sisters. I'm sure you all know about the struggle that we have continued for the past 2.5 years to stop Columbia University from building a biotechnical lab on the site of the Audubon Ballroom. Just as Warner Brothers in Hollywood is trying to destroy the image of Malcolm X, so is Columbia University trying to destroy the image and the legacy of Malcolm. But we have decided that we will not allow that to happen. And so we have continued to struggle. We have gone to court. We have taken every legal step possible. Of course, we have not won because we all know about justice in the United States. But that doesn't stop us. That doesn't disappoint us. because we only did that because people will say to you, why don't you go to court? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And so we have gone to all the boards there are that are supposed to see the Columbia University come to the community and talk to them about what they're doing. We have gone to the courts to say that they cannot build a biotechnical lab in our community because what is biotechnical research about? What is Columbia University about? We all know what Columbia University have been, what they have done in our communities, and what they continue to do. They lie to us and they tell us that they are going to make life better for us by bringing biotechnology into our community. Columbia University manages almost all the hospitals in New York City. And they say that now they're coming to cure all kinds of ills with biotechnology. Until today, they have cured no ills. All of the ills in our community have gotten far worse over the years. They have brought, well, I'm not, the system has brought in AIDS to our community because nobody in the world can tell me that the only way that you get AIDS is through sex and by sharing a dirty needle. It's impossible that so many people could have AIDS if that's the way it happened. They said that all of Africa is almost eaten up with AIDS. And you want to tell me that that's how they got it? Well, they cannot convince me about that. And all I can say is that what they want to do now is to bring further diseases to us. Diseases that we never even thought of. That all of a sudden one day we're going to hear about something else that's destroying us. And we won't know where it came from. But if we look at the history, we should know where it came from. Over the years, what we have tried to do is to try to inform the community about our struggle to save the Audubon and to preserve the legacy of Malcolm X. We say that the Audubon Ballroom must be turned into a multicultural center for the benefit of our community. Dr. Clark just said that we need to have our own movie studio in our community. That's one of the things we're talking about. That when we have an international multicultural center in our community, that we can do whatever we want to do. And nobody can say to us, you can't do that here. And that the only way that that is going to happen is for us to struggle to stop Columbia from coming into the community with biotechnical research. The only thing that Columbia University will gain when they get the Audubon, if we don't stop them, is that they're going to get a whole lot of money. They're bringing in all of these pharmaceutical companies, and they are going to use us as the guinea pigs. Because every time that one of us have to go to the hospital, we're going to be told we need this test or that test or the other test, and the best place you can get it is at this biotechnical institute. And so we better wake up and be wise about that. we better stand up and say no to biotechnology in our community. What does biotechnology do? It changes what we look like. It splices genes, and only recently I started to understand what that meant. That they can take the hormones from a human being and put it into the food we eat, and they are doing it today. That they can take a fly and inject it into anything that we eat, and we think, and make us think that it's good for us. They have taken rabbit fur and injected it into the rat, and the rat has rabbit fur on it. They have taken human hormones, injected it into the bovine cow so that it will give milk until it can't give it anymore and it dies. And they have also injected, and don't take it from me, read the New York Times, they have injected human hormones into a fish. And they say the fish was this size when it started, and now it's this size, and it will feed more people. They didn't say how much it costs for us to buy our own hormones and eat it. What are they promoting in biotechnology? Cannibalism? Because think about it. If our hormones are being injected into the food we eat, we're eating ourselves. We're eating each other. You know, one time they had this movie called Soylent Green, and they showed, you know, how they took the bodies and turned them into pills and fed it into other people. That's it. That's it. Okay? So we've got to stop it. And not only do we have to stop it from coming to the Audubon, we've got to stop it, period, because even though we stop them from the Audubon, they'll do it someplace else. But my main reason for being here is because they are coming into our community, into the Black and Latina community, to do this, because they feel that they don't have to respect us, that they can come and do whatever they want to do in our community, and we're going to sit down and just let it happen. And, you know, so that it's time for us to do something about it. When we first went to the board, Planning Board 12, which is supposed to be there for the benefit of the community, and raised up the idea of the Audubon, because this has been going on for 10 years, they tell us, but the board has never made it the knowledge to the community. And when we went there, they say, where have you been? This has been going on for 10 years, okay? And they have, of course, have not stopped Columbia or even said, no, you've got to bring this information to the community. Wherever we found out that there was something going on, we organized the community and took them there. And the community stood up and said, no. And if we had access to the videotapes that were taken, you would see that. And yet Columbia University had the nerve to say that they got the approval from the community. So it's time for us to start to get angry. It's time for us to start to say, you, Columbia University, cannot come into our community and destroy the image of our hero, because we're not going to let you name a hero for us. Our hero is Malcolm X. We follow the teaching of Malcolm X, and we will continue to follow the teaching of Malcolm X, whatever happens. Viola talked to you about December 12th, following the teaching of Malcolm. going to Geneva and being, international, going to the UN. That is exactly what we're talking about when we say that the Audubon Ballroom must be turned into an international, multicultural community center. And when we say that, we don't mean that anybody who feels like it can come there and do anything. We're talking about people who struggle for their liberation in any part of the world, that they are welcome to our international multicultural community center. And that is what we're struggling for. That is what we will continue to struggle for. Vi said that we must take it to the streets. I say we must take it to the streets. I say that we should leave here tonight and go to the Audubon. There you can see the Audubon, where Malcolm taught us to be self-determining. You can also see the work that we have done. And we would like you to join us on Saturdays and help us. We clean around the Audubon every Saturday morning from 10 to 12. And we also we have done painting around the Audubon. There's a lot to be done. And so any of you who are artists or, have information that you want to get out, bring it to the Audubon and put it up on the Audubon. The building is there, and we want to claim it as our own. We have already claimed it, and we're inviting you to make it yours. There is a portrait of Malcolm that's been there now for 2 years that was done by a young sister from our community. And we put it up there, and, it's been there, and Columbia didn't dare go near it. Even though some brothers had done a mural on the wall, and the city in Columbia came and they took it down to preserve it because they said they're going to put it into the biotechnical lab, okay? But anything that, one of the things is, too, that people heard Ruth Messinger say that at one point she was against, she wouldn't vote to give the money from the municipal, fund to Columbia because they weren't thinking about, giving a part of it to Malcolm. She was for preserving the Audubon only in terms of giving a part of the ballroom as a monument to Malcolm. We said, hell no, that will never happen. We say the Audubon Ballroom, San Juan Theater, from 165th Street to 166th Street, from Broadway to St. Nicholas Avenue belong to us. They will not get any part of it, and we invite you to join us in that struggle. Thank you very much, and hope that you will join us.
Thank you very much, Sister Olive Armstrong. You must remember, too, that Sister Armstrong is very sincere when she makes these demands. She was one of the people who, in the case of the New York 8, became one of the people who refused on principle to give any information to the authorities about the people who were held in an illegal move by the state, and a test, where they could actually just imprison you without having any kind of real information, just based on what they perceived that you were going to do. And she spoke at our program the day before she went into jail to do several months there, based on the fact that she belonged to an organization. She would not sell out anybody. She would not give up any information. So that's Sister Olive Armstrong. I want you to know that. All right, we're going to save it. But we're going to move out of here in a minute. But before that, we have one more speaker, and this speaker, I mean, we're glad he got it because this brother tomorrow will be celebrating with his wife Amina their 25th wedding anniversary. So, you know, as we said before, Brother Baraka got here, this is not about Baraka versus Spike Lee. It ain't got nothing to do. That's the way the people would like us to think. It's about two personalities. This is about a community. This is about a movement which Baraka is a part of, and the contradiction that we have with Hollywood and with people who aspire to be Hollywood producers. Will you please welcome at this particular time, without any further ado, Brother Amiri Baraka.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. I almost didn't get here. We had another murder in our community in Newark. Sister Rosa Gray, who some of you might know, longtime activist. Three nights ago, her daughter was stabbed to death in some kind of senseless murder on the sidewalks. 2 years ago, her youngest son had his brains blown out 2 blocks away from that, the same woman. And now she's getting ready to flee and go to Baltimore. And the only reason you would go to Baltimore is you don't know nothing about it. Right. Because it's the same thing, same problems. And in Newark, we got wall-to-wall Negroes. Y'all got 2 or 3, y'all got the dink a couple of years ago, so you new to the game. We've been playing the game since 1970. You understand? We had wall-to-wall Negroes, all sizes, shapes, and colors, all ideologies, give you the handshake, got whatever hairstyle, dashiki you want, can tell you anything, can tell you you're a slave in Arabic, Swahili, Yoruba, anything else. You understand what I'm saying? Still kicking our behinds. Now the only thing when we run in the mayor's office, we get a better game than we got when the white boy was there. Just a better game. And so I want to say something first about the Black Liberation Movement and the Sisyphus Syndrome. You know, with the Sisyphus Syndrome, you know Mr. Sisyphus? Y'all went to American school, so that means you must know something about Greek mythology. You might not know nothing about African mythology, but I know you know something about Greek mythology. That's when they roll the rock up the hill, and then God rolls it back down on your head. So 3 times we've done that. 19th century, ice slavery. You know, 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment, 40 acres and a mule. Lo and behold, betrayal, Hayes-Tilden Compromise. Disarm the black soldiers, pull the Union troops out. Rock come rolling down. By 1896, they get Clarence Thomas. Back then they used to call him Booker T. Washington. 1896, they get Clarence Thomas to come in and say, separate but equal. That's what the Negro's saying now. Separate but equal. To make you a part of this, yet not part of it. You understand what I mean? To make you a second-class citizen. Now, you can't be a second-class citizen. You understand what I'm saying? You can be sick, you understand? Or you could be well, or you could be dead. You understand? But there's no such thing as you being live and dead at the same thing. You understand what I'm saying? You can't be live and dead, and you can't be no second-class citizen. And then in the 20th century, Garvey, Du Bois, you know, the whole African Blood Brotherhood, the Harlem Renaissance, we pushed it up again. We pushed it up again. The National Negro Congress, we pushed it up again. And then, lo and behold, the whole 30s and the Depression, it come back down again. And every time they roll the rock back down on our heads, the Klan rises up again. All the things you think you defeated in the last decade return to get you back. Now, you never thought you'd see the Klan again after the 50s and 60s. You never thought you'd see people actually daring to come and lay their hands on you anymore after the 50s and 60s. You thought we had scared them white people forever and ever, that you would never see another racist. You see, that's the Sisyphus Syndrome. The rock cut back down on your head and the Klan is with it. People jumping out of cars, assassinating you in the street is with it. You coming into, quote, white neighborhoods. How could there be a white neighborhood in a democracy? You coming into a white neighborhood and getting shot down like Yusef Hawkins. You understand what I'm saying? Or like the brother Howard Caesar in Newark 2 weeks ago, and they just confessed being shot with a 45 when all the cops carry 9mm. And then, of course, in the 50s and 60s, the third point of the Sisyphus Syndrome, we pushed it up. Malcolm X, the Black Panther Party, Martin Luther King, SNCC, SCLC, Congress of African People. I mean, everything. We had all kinds of things happening. The Gary Convention, the ALSC, everybody was organized. You understand what I mean? But lo and behold, by the time of the late 70s, after the black bourgeoisie, after the black caucus, after all of those Negroes that come in here with them $400 suits, no, that was last year, with them $600 suits, you understand? They have co-opted the black liberation movement. They have made the black liberation movement about getting insulted by white people, about being the tail on the tail, about being some kind of insect stuck upside the donkey's tail. Po Jesse.
Yes.
But we have to see that in terms of dialectics, that is, that things are composed of opposites, that there is no up without down, there is no fast without slow, no left without right, that everything is composed of opposites. That's what we mean by dialectics. You understand what I'm saying? So you have to understand that every time we push the rock up the hill, they have to push it down. And so that in the 50s and 60s, when we get some people we think of as leaders, these elected officials we put into office, which they have to let in because we are burning up cities, we are running in inside of their offices. And remember, black people have burnt down every major city in this country. It ain't new. Los Angeles is not new. Every city in this country we have burnt down. New York we burnt down 3 times before the 19th century.
Yes.
New Orleans, Charleston. Why? Because the same stuff was going down. And what did a black man say from ancient times? I rise in fire, cried the phoenix. That's what he said. The blackbird, the soul, Ba, that's what he said. I rise in fire. So it ain't nothing new. When it get too hot, we rise in fire. So the point I'm trying to make is this, is that we have created this class of Negroes. Not that we wanted to create them, we were struggling for liberation, but to fight us back.
Yeah.
You understand what I mean? You know, like in them old Dracula pictures, just when Dracula is gonna get you, they'll whip out a cross and hold on you and make you go back, see? So that we running around talking about black, 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 and did not know that there's different kinds of blacks. Did not know that there's such a thing as a comprador black. Somebody that worked for your enemy looked just like you. We was just talking about skin, skin, skin. And we talked about skin and the comprador got in. Our enemies got in. These Negro crosses that they hold up at us as if we were Dracula and we had to shrink because now, what are you talking about inequality? You got the Black Caucus.
Yes.
You got Dinkins. You got Clarence Thomas. You understand? All butchers, murderers, backward Negroes, don't care nothing about you. And if you don't understand the difference between the great majority of working class black people and that little 0.6% pimple that rules you, then you are ignorant and deserve to be a slave, and don't even deserve it, will be one, because that is what our ignorance gets us. We are now actually abused by people that look like us. We got so hip, we knew the white boy was out. We say, no, you can't govern us. Now, wait a minute. That's Amilcar Cabral. You read that? Return to the source.
Yes.
The weapon of theory, Amilcar Cabral, leader of the Guinea Revolution. He says, when imperialism can no longer rule directly, they rule through native agents. Yes. You know what a native agent is? That's somebody look like the native. We the native. In New York, they can't have a Koch no more, so they get the Dink. In Newark, they can't have Adonisio no more, so they get Sharp James, who is now in Barcelona, as a matter of fact, watching the Olympics. So we have to see that our struggle creates a class of Negroes that serve our enemy. You following this? Because it's important. It's important that the next time you see one of these Negroes, you don't just stand there with your mouth open because they black, and when they put the handshake on you, then all your rage is gone. If you can begin to treat these niggas like you treated them white people, you get to motion. If you could begin to treat these middle-class Negroes like you treated them white people, you would see some action. But the skin thing is still taking us out, you see. The skin thing is still taking us out, and you got to get smarter than that. You got to get more progressive than that. Now let me go on with this retrograde trend. This group of backward Negroes that exists now and exists to stop our struggle, to co-opt our struggle, to lie about our struggle. You see, many of the brothers and sisters, for instance, who used to write in the 50s and 60s, you don't see them no more. You know, instead, the people you see in these magazines and newspapers, well, people like the Stanley Crouches, and that's a good, you know, instead of actually crawling like the straight out caveman, they got to make you think that they done got civilized, so they give you a crouch. You know what I'm saying? It ain't, it's a straight out crawl, it's a crouch. So you say, well, it's half civilized, I'll go for that. You know what I mean? Then you got people like the Playthel Ben Yes-mens, you know what I mean, who are out there. Or people like Thomas Sowell. They used to, remember you say Soul Brothers, then they changed that, now it's S-O-W-E-L-L or S-O-L-D, the Soul Brothers, you understand? They took all of that and they gone. They done took our soul. And now we got a new, like, loathsome Negro.
Yes.
Skip Gates, Henry Louis Gates, you saw him, right?
Yes.
You saw the Anti-Defamation League actually took out an ad in this week's Amsterdam News. It wasn't editorial in their paper is the New York Times, but in the colored paper, you understand, they have to take it out as an advertisement, and in it, they say that all black intellectuals are anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
Now let's check that out. If you know anything about history, first of all, and this is an aside, I ain't even talking about this, but I thought I should talk about it. The mythology of black anti-Semitism, that's the biggest. If you go back to Moorish Spain, who saved the Jews? The Moors. The minute the Christians got in power, they had what is called what? The Inquisition. It was us. It was the Moors that saved their ass. Number two, Hitler was white. Hitler was from Europe. Hitler wasn't from Harlem. Hitler wasn't from Harlem. And if you check out the racial laws of Nazi Germany, you'll find that the first racial law is the abolition of nigger culture. Nigger culture, that's us, the niggers and the culture. You would figure, well, no niggers over there. But Duke Ellington had been there, and you know what Duke would do when he go by a place, he changed everything to riffs and blues and swing. So they even banned that there. You know, that's why now they got Arnold Schwarzenegger. They still trying to creep up in your thing, if you understand what I'm saying. Arnold Schwarzenegger. We was gonna start something called Arnold Weisser-Hunky, just as an extra, you know what I mean? But that'll probably be a Spike Lee movie, Arnold Weisser-Hunky. Arnold Weisser-Hunky meets Arnold Schwarzenegger. That sounds good. But let us say this. If the Jewish bourgeoisie was candid, they would say those things I told you. That the long history of African people and the Afro-American people has always and consistently been to protect Jews. Why? Because we was the first Jews. We was the first Caucasians. And the first Guineas. You understand? So you're talking about Jews. We was the first Jews. We protected you because we thought you was one of our followers. What you talking about? Like rock and roll and rhythm and blues. Now you're going to get off by yourself talking about rock and roll. All right, if you want to be with them Christians, remember, they the ones that killed you.
Yes.
They the ones that still kill you, not black people. Not black people. And those black people who do take those anti-Jewish positions are parallel to them Jews that take anti-black positions. They got their right-wing cultural nationalists, and we got our right-wing, which we ain't got a right to have backward people in our generation and in our particular sector. Yes. But the Jews and blacks got in conflict as Jews' economic and social status rose, just like buppies. You know them Negroes, they was with you the minute they start getting a little big. They got a little space between you and them. Next thing you know, they start criticizing you. It's the same thing. They the buppies of this society. And so now they want to criticize us because we mad because we ain't going no way. But when they was in a trick, when Hitler was kicking their butt, we was the 8-spoon coons. Yes. Read the book called Communists in Harlem by my boy James Nason. Read that. Read that book. Check it out. We was the 8-spoon coons. But then the Jewish bourgeoisie, The same little group that we got in our group, that little 0.6%, that little pimple that runs things. You know them Negroes you see in Jet and Ebony? You know them Negroes, you always see them, the little pimple worth of Negroes. They always suffering a national oppression in a penthouse, so it's a little easier. You have to remember that the Jewish bourgeoisie, it was German Jews that sold out the Jewish people. And I'm going around this to get to my point. The German Jews, who were the richest of all the Jews,
Yes.
from Rothschild on,
Yes.
they sold the Jews out. Even when they was in the United States, they let the Jews be murdered. First of all, because they had all integrated into German society and German culture and thought of themselves as Germans, not Jewish. They used to ridicule those Jews that spoke Yiddish. Check out the parallel now. Come on. I'm coming around to it. Check out the parallel now, see? It was the German Jews who allowed the poor, the working class, the trade union, and the communist Jews to get iced. And then they fled to America. They fled to Great Britain. They set up their banks. They run New York right this minute, at this moment. While we speak, they run New York. Now that's facts. This ain't cultural nationalism. You want to get in the books, we'll get down in the books. But the point is this, brothers and sisters, that you have to see that we are facing the same situation. Because these people are now on the road to fascism. The open terrorist dictatorship. Not no voting. You understand? Not what you want to do. Dictatorship by the gun. That is what they're coming to. If you don't think that's what you saw in Los Angeles with Rodney King, with the Richard Pryor defense, that's what we call the Richard Pryor defense. You remember Richard Pryor? He said he was in bed with this woman. His wife walked in the room, and his wife said, "What you doing in the bed with that woman, Richard?" He said, "I ain't in the bed." He said, "I ain't in the bed with her." He said, "Who you gonna believe, me or your lying eyes?" Well, that's what we call this, the Richard Pryor defense. Because now, just as the German bourgeoisie, the Jews there, and the American Jewish bourgeoisie sold out Jewish people in the Holocaust, hoping they would like spare them, but in the end, even they had to get out. So now, our little pipsqueak Negro bourgeoisie, and our little petty bourgeoisie, the double pipsqueak Negroes,
Right.
you understand? Now they are selling us out by telling us, like Radio Raheem, that our culture is fascist, that we are fascists, that our culture is fascist, and that our culture must be resisted, and the only way to salvation is to turn yourself white as snow. White as snow. And so now when we see Skip Gates in the New York Times, we know Skip Gates is a comprador. What is a comprador? Comprador means to sell. Like the Puerto Ricans say, vende patria, you sell your country. When the Puerto Ricans be saying vende patria, they mean you're selling your country.
Yeah.
A comprador is the same thing. That means you're selling your nation, because we are a nation of people.
Yes, we are.
We are a nation of people.
Yep.
And we have the right to self-determination. We do not have to be here existing up under this weight of these backward neo-fascist people. We have the right to self-determination. People like Crouch and Playthell or Ben Yes-Man, they're compradors. People like this colon, you know, and a colon is the thing attached to the lower intestine that leads the doo-doo. You know, that's what leads the feces through to the rectum. You know what I mean? And when you get through it, you boy, you really get rectum too, or you just release it right on your head. The colon. These are all compradors. And these compradors, these collaborators, prepare the way for fascism, just like the sellout bourgeois German Jews did prepare the way for the Holocaust. That is why you must understand classes and class struggle, that people are divided according to their relationship to the means of producing wealth. That people are divided in society based on how they relate to the means. How do they get their money? Do they give orders or take orders? What is their place in the social organization of labor? How do they get their money and how much money they get? If you think you're in the same class as Charlie Rango, then this ain't meant for you. You might be. But if you ain't, you're ignorant. And you need to understand that that top 500 Negroes in black enterprise do not have your interests at heart. That most of these wealthy preachers, whatever their particular idea, don't have your welfare at heart. They have their pockets at heart and their hands in your pocket. And usually most people that tell you to look up in the sky means they pick in your pocket at that very moment. That is why we need a revolutionary party to bring first self-determination for the Afro-American people, and I'm not joining nothing. I don't care what it's called unless that's number one, self-determination. If self-determination for black people ain't on the first, I ain't in it. I don't care what you call it, what it look like, what you say it is, I ain't in that. Don't put me in it. You understand? Secondly, people's democracy. That the corporate enterprises, until we can get rid of capitalism, because I want to get rid of it, tell you the truth. But you can't get rid of it just by saying get rid of it. Don't want it, you can fix your car by just saying go. You understand? It is a process. You understand? And so what am I talking about? I'm talking about that finally the public sector, which they're trying to dismantle, that the public sector must dominate the private sector. You cannot have the private sector dominate the public sector, and that we must have constitutional amendments to try to change that. That's the second function of a party, and ultimately to bring socialism. That is the collective control of the wealth by the people who work. The collective control of the wealth, the collective distribution of the wealth by the people that work, by all of us that work, that all the wealth created in society should be divided among all the people of society, and that everybody should eat, everybody should have clothes, and everybody should have a place to live by virtue of them existing in the world. Do you understand that? By virtue of them being here. Let me go on. And now, so now I'm going to get finally to Spike. We said to Spike in the beginning, this is before they sent us the bogus script in the mail, which my wife insists was a Trojan horse. But anyway, before we got the script, I had said, Spike, she's got to have it, trashes black women. School days, trashes black institutions. Do the right thing, trashes the black liberation movement. Mo Better Blues trashes black artists and black art, and again, black women. And Jungle Fever celebrates apartheid. The white woman got the most important lines. We never even see the black woman's family. We see everybody else's family. We see the white boy's family, the white girl's family. We see his family. We never, and then I want to know why the woman was making all that noise when they was making love. Is that a personal experience, Spike, or are you trying to tell us something? You understand what I mean? It's like grim if you learn to read movies like you read books, and that's what you got to learn. Just because they got a boombox and say, yo, don't mean it's for you. Yes. You have to be able to read films like you read books. You have to find out what that film is saying, who it celebrates, and who it puts down. You have to find out whose side is it on. You understand? And I'm saying that those films that you made before I saw the jive script were backward. And so we admonish Spike. Those of us, Lombe, Viola, Preston, Sonny Carson, some other people, we admonished Spike. We warned him. We said, don't take the same approach of trashing black life, of revealing your double consciousness, that is, seeing yourself through the eyes of people that hate you, which is what Du Bois used to talk about. We don't want to see no black communities look the same as they do in the Hill Street Blues, but in Do the Right Thing, you couldn't tell the difference between a black community and Hill Street Blues. And for people who talk about black exploitation films, now we got black exploitation films made by black people. How slick. And what you need to do is check the 60s out and look at those so-called black exploitation films. I bet you this, I bet you Superfly got a superior message to House Party. I bet you the Mac got as strong a political line on any of Spike's things. Now check it out. Go check it out. Go look at it. Pimps, dope. What was the theme of Superfly? A man trying to get away from selling dope. A man opposed to the mob and opposed to the cops trying to get away from selling dope. What was the thing about the Mac? A man trying to get away from being a pimp. Check those out, and then check these movies out. Like Malcolm said, you've been lied to. You've been tricked.
You've been had.
You've been had, that's right. But nowadays, we get the other way around. We see when somebody shows the gun or the Bible, for instance, in Jungle Fever, that means they're gonna kill a black person. It don't mean like in Jimmy Baldwin, you talking about going up against the oppressor. Like in Zoo Man and the Sign, Charlie Fuller's thing, where at the end, the black community has to get the courage enough to shoot a black working class kid. Or like in Jungle Fever, where the black father has to get enough courage to kill his own son because he's guilty of being a crackhead. Not the oppressor we are asked to wage war against, but our own people. Look, read the movies like you read a book. We made our statement based on the other films, and then a script came and we read it. And everything that's Skip, Spike, same thing, Skip, Spike. But when a script came, we denounced that too. And the script was funky, that's why he's having denounced it, saying, this film, yesterday I saw in the Amsterdam News, he said, I want to stop all these people saying that this film is about Malcolm X in bed with a white woman. Hey, look here, brother, that script was about that.
Yes.
See, now I don't know what you did now. I suspect that you went out and got that extra money from them Negroes that you lined up, Michael Jackson and Cosby and them, and I want to know when they gonna make a black movie. You understand? I want to know when they gonna make a movie about Nat Turner or Marcus Garvey. You understand? When they gonna make a movie about W.E.B. Du Bois. You know what I'm saying? I mean, these people, these middle-class Negroes, they'll always give some lip service to Langston Hughes when you're gonna do his books. They'll always give some lip service to Zora Neale Hurston when you're gonna do a book. Instead of Ghost Dad or Uptown Saturday Night. When you gonna do the great works of Afro-American literature? You understand what I'm saying? When you gonna do Frederick Douglass and Du Bois? When you gonna do The Life of Garvey? When you gonna do our great and classic works? Don't play me cheap. Some of us know what's happening with our own people, and it ain't no Ghost Dad, and it ain't no Jungle Fever neither. But now, when I began to attack the script, he got nasty and personal. Although he never tried to defend himself ideologically. And Ilombe could tell you when we was down there in, what was the church? Abyssinia. I talked bad about that brother for an hour and a half. He was sitting right there. And afterwards he came up and said, Amity, I'm gonna make a good film. I'm gonna make a good film. And I said, well, it's on you, Spike, because if you don't, black people will think of you as a traitor. So he raised some more money, I hope. I hope he raised it to change that film. I hope. But I think this, that even so, I would presume that the film is going to be ideologically weak. I know that he probably cleaned up the scene where he accuses Elijah Muhammad of murdering Malcolm X. I would imagine he cleaned it up. You know, and I'm sure Minister Farrakhan would be very interested in that part of it. In fact, the whole Nation of Islam, because you know good and well that it was the FBI. Yes. It was the government that killed Malcolm X. And I am sorry, Betty. I am sorry, Betty Shabazz. I love you like my own sister, Betty. I love you like my own sister and honor you as Malcolm's wife.
Yes.
But the FBI killed Malcolm.
Yes, they did.
You cannot let your own anger and rage blind you to the struggle. The FBI and the CIA, the same people that killed Dr. King and Kennedy and Medgar Evers and Fred Hampton and Bobby Hutton, the same people that killed them. The same people that killed Patrice Lumumba and David Sebeco. The same people. The same people. And then we hear that Spike said that he don't have to do what the community say. If we want anything to do with this movie, we could pay our $6 like everybody else. Well, the only thing I say, my brother, is why is it that when you were struggling with the white boy to get the film, that you start waving the red, black, and green? You start talking about, wait a minute, you can't buy no pig snouts from the white boy. My pig snouts taste better than the white boy's pig snouts. The white boy's pig snouts is devilish. My pig snouts will take you to heaven. You understand what I mean? Like black dope, they pray over it and it ain't don't get you dopey. The question is, the bourgeoisie struggles for their markets. And that is what Spike was doing, struggling for a market. And having secured that market, he did not need us anymore. And now he wants to lie about the script, and I hope that he has changed all that. In the script, there was no early Malcolm, except in the mine of Detroit Red. Malcolm's father got killed in the mine of Detroit Red. Malcolm's mother got driven crazy in the mine of Detroit Red. In the film, in the script, the white prostitute was in the film more than Betty Shabazz or Elijah Muhammad. Surely he has changed that. Elijah Muhammad was in the flick less than Shorty. Shorty is the sidekick. You didn't know Malcolm had a sidekick? In this film, he got a sidekick named Shorty. You know, like Batman and Shorty, the same kind of thing. And now, we see, Brother Lombe showed me where the Denzel, who's Malcolm X, is now going to be in a homosexual film with a white guy. What's his name? Swayze? Swayze. With Swayze, which is like a book by Bruce Perry.
Yes.
That begins by saying, first of all, Malcolm was white. Now check that out. He said Malcolm was mad because he was white, and he didn't want to be white. That's Bruce Perry. That Malcolm was sick, his father was sick, his mother was sick, that Malcolm was homosexual. This is Bruce Perry, whose name ain't Bruce Perry. When I was on a television show and they asked him what his real name, they turned the television show off and put me off the show because I said, your name can be Bruce Perry. Now, what is your real name? And of course, that was the end of that show. Night Watch, it was. And so they are using Malcolm's life to try to attack the Nation of Islam, to try to make Malcolm X seem like he finally came back from Mecca and turned into Martin Luther King. They are trying to make it seem that the militant sector of the black liberation movement is all done, finished, that it has no object, and that its origins were psychopathic at best. Check it out and oppose that. We need a united front, but Malcolm was a revolutionary. Martin Luther King was a reformer, God bless his soul. I respect him, but Martin Luther King was a reformer. He thought that he could change this system by getting in it. He did not want to coexist with racism, though. That's a lie. He thought that by us getting in the system, he would change it and exorcise racism. But Malcolm believed in self-determination, self-respect, and self-defense. And so I want to end by saying these issues now concerning these compradors, and we hope Spike has come to some clarity. You know, we hope that he has changed that film in a way that makes it worthy of Malcolm X, because you know it will have to be a hell of a film to be worthy of Malcolm X. But we have to see, brothers and sisters, that we are now in the end of rising fascism. That all of the democratic forces in the Second World War lost the war. That the Germans and the Japanese control the world economically. And that they made a pact before the Second World War that whoever won the war and whoever lost the war, that these companies would stay intact. That is why people run around talking about Japan, Sony. Sony means Standard Oil in New York. It is a multinational corporation still run by the Rockefellers, the Mitsubishis, the Farbins, the Matsushitas, the same people. They sold it to themselves. You understand what I'm saying? So don't talk about the Japanese and the Germans. It's the question of international fascism. And now this new world order is the same as the old world order. It means that that tiny handful of European powers, now with the United States and Japan, will crush the rest of the world. They will march through the rest of the world when they want to. The European Economic Community is German. The Southeast Asian community is Japanese. All the national liberation movements, like ANC, and I hate to tell you that, have been co-opted. The brother come over here and speak in your home and don't say a word about our liberation. Come here on 125th Street and never mention your liberation. Go back home and let his own wife get busted and dragged away. Will not declare armed struggle against beasts and fascists. And how you gonna get a beast and a fascist to stop killing you? By smiling and offer negotiate. Negotiate with a crocodile, see what he tell you. Negotiate with a mad tiger, see what he tell you, I'll bite your arm off. And for Jesse Jackson talking about the lions and the lambs should lay down together, only thing that means is lamb chops, and we know that. And so, brothers and sisters, we must see that it is the co-optation of the national liberation movements. It is neo-colonialism, native agents ruling in the place of foreign domination. It has caused the revisionism of things like the Soviet Union, where the Soviet Union now has become an absolute capitalist power. And you see what's happening now in East Europe because of that.
They've already killed 30,000 Muslims in Bosnia-Herzegovina. I ain't heard a Muslim say nothing yet.
Yeah.
Where's the international Islamic community?
Yes.
You mean just because they white Muslims, y'all not gonna save them? Y'all gonna let them get wiped out by them fascist Serbians? We know the Serbians was fascist before, but this is Bush's New World Order. To let fascism everywhere rise, and to be against the Africans, the Asians, the Arab peoples, the Latin Americans, and this is their New World Order, and that is what finally is reflected in this retrograde trend of niggas like Skip Gates and Spike Lee. We need a party.
Yes.
Like Malcolm X, we need a party that talks about self-determination
Yes.
for the Afro-American people and self-respect and self-defense.
Yes.
We also need a party that deals with people's democracy, that the public sector must begin to rule the private sector again, and ultimately a party so that we can struggle for socialism. And for those of you who died in the war, nationalists, let me tell you this, man. The oldest social and economic system in the world is communism.
Yes.
And it came from Africa.
Africa.
Thank you very much.
Brother Baraka.